Thank you once again, and welcome to Where Are They Now? And we were joking before we went on the air. You're in great company, Heft, when you hear that open. I mean, a lot of people here. But you've been on this show so many times, it's almost like we should send you that letter jacket, and you wear it proudly, huh?
Yeah, a big O, huh?
Yeah. I mean, you wear it around occasionally, right?
Well, I do like to walk my dog when it's a little chilly, so.
Or go play golf when it's snowing or something like that, yeah.
Well, maybe not snowing.
So
any other time.
How's that weather out there in the Great North? I mean, you had a little snow going on, huh?
I just had a little, maybe an inch or so. Woke up a couple mornings, Sunday and Monday. It's been long. It's long gone, and it's all good now. It's going to be in the 70s tomorrow, and with about 50-mile-an-hour wind. But hey, I'll take the warmth.
Hey, you can't have everything, right? That's for sure.
That's right.
And before we talk X's and O's and in this matchup that's coming up here, 2:30, Iowa State, Oklahoma State here, right in Stillwater. Let's kind of get the Iowa State version, if you will. We've been bragging on Oklahoma State's following of medical plans, the protocols during this COVID thing, and our numbers have been negligible really here. And I've always said that's a direct reflection of the kids buying into what they're being told. Obviously, Iowa State's had the same kind of a situation, right?
Oh, absolutely. They've done a great job. They had a great plan put in place. I mean, one of the things that's so tough, it's such a moving target. Things change, and then when the students come back, it had a big spike in Ames around that time. But, I think a lot of it has to do, you're right about the players. I mean, the coaches, the administration, the medical staff, they can say whatever they want. It's up to the players to do it. I think the number one thing to make that a reality and work in the way you want it to is to have great leaders on your football team that'll hold their peers accountable. And I think Iowa State does have that. And I think that's been a real big reason why haven't really been dinged so far. Knock on wood, because we all know what could happen. But so far, from a Cyclone standpoint, so good.
In general, the athletic department there at Iowa State, have they been as successful in other sports? And we're going to get into basketball at the tail end of our discussion, but so far so good there?
Absolutely. I think they've had maybe 5 positives in the last month, including staff and all athletes, and they were all asymptomatic at that. So I think they've done a terrific job, and I mean they make a point of it every day. Man, tell you what, that football, basketball office, all the offices, the Jacobson Building at athletic headquarters, it's kind of like Fort Knox now. Yeah. It's tough. It's tough to get in, and they're going to keep it that way as long as they need to.
You've been around this game a long time, and you played it on a basketball level. I mean, we're in areas that every time you turn around and think, is this really what we're doing here? But it's a necessity to get the games played. And speaking of the games, I made mention before you went on the air, one thing that impresses me about this Iowa State football team, the Louisiana game notwithstanding, and we get into that a little bit, but this is a confident bunch. These guys know they're good, and they know what they can do and how to do it, and they're probably looking forward to this one Saturday.
They are for sure. I mean, they look forward to, I think, every game. You mentioned that Louisiana game, and it was, kind of the practices had been kind of disjointed, if you will, because of COVID situation. And, you only have so much time to work. Special teams was an area that killed Iowa State, gave up a kickoff return for a touchdown, gave up a punt return, 85-yard punt return for a touchdown. I mean, Iowa State wins that game if they don't do that, because they actually dominated a line of scrimmage of the game against a really good Louisiana team. But, hey, everybody was going through the same thing, and Iowa State got hurt there. But they are a confident group. They know who they are. They've got a lot of experience. They've got a good blend of youth and experience, really on both sides of the ball. And I think in year 5, I think each year there's been maybe a step forward to some extent, And I think that's what we're seeing right now. They feel really good about where they are, and they know that they're not the most talented team, but they got a lot of really good players, and they play as a unit. I thought our game against Texas Tech, the defense was probably as connected on all three levels as I've ever seen, Iowa State defense be.
I made mention of this, and I know Matt is not going to get cornered into this, and he's every game we're early into the year and what's the process and all that. But, Iowa State the last 3-4 years, Oklahoma State has been, except for the one down here the other day, 2 years ago, has been that stumbling block that they have to get over. I mean, in order to get to where Iowa State needs to be or wants to be, Oklahoma State's in their way. And they have to find a way to win that game, much like, and I've used this example, much like Oklahoma is in Oklahoma State's way every time they want to take that step toward the top of the ladder. Do you see it? Now, I'm not sure Matt doesn't say this and the players don't see it this way, but is that a fair assessment?
Well, I think there's some truth to it. I mean, just like most things you say, not all things you say, but most.
Hey, I'm just honored that you agreed to that one right there. Thank you.
They're the one team that Iowa State really hasn't been able to stop. Even the win down there, I think it was, 49-42?
Yeah,
I mean,
right. Mm-hmm.
And I think it goes to the balance that the Cowboys have. I think you're really balanced on offense, and you're hard to stop. And I think if there's one area where Iowa State is a little, I would say, not at the level of some of the very top teams around, it would be the lack of speed at the back end defensively. And it's hurt Iowa State by giving up big plays. Last year Iowa State played really well. Brock Purdy threw 3 picks, including the pick 6 that decided the game.
Right.
But it was the 3 big plays, 50-yard plus touchdowns in the first half that really led to Iowa State's demise in that one. And once again, so it's hard to make up for lack of speed. But I think it's not that Iowa State's guys are slow. It's like, hey, some of those Cowboys are really fast, and I think you're in a situation with a coach, you've got a system in place. Everybody's pretty much on the same page, and if you make one mistake, you guys can take it to the house, and you got the personnel to do it. And I think that's been maybe the single biggest thing for Iowa State to try to get over that hump. I mean, we have gotten over it with Oklahoma to some extent,
sure,
and everybody else in the league. But, yeah, you guys are a bit of a stumbling block that hope to change on Saturday.
Do you see an improvement in that foot speed this year over years past? Because I'm glad you said that. And it's not a knock on anybody, but, when you get real super athletes who can run and jump and leave you in the dust, I mean, sometimes that track speed doesn't look good compared to guys who can't catch you.
Well, that's true. I think the biggest thing, Iowa State's able to make up for a lot of that by being in the right place and being connected. And if you anticipate and you have studied the film, you can make up for a half step. And I think that's what Iowa State's been able to do to mitigate some of that. Like I said, they're not necessarily slow, but, the top-end speed can kind of get to them once in a while.
Let's start on the defensive side. I love Eisworth. I mean, that guy could play for me every day of the week and twice on Sunday. He is really a guy that you want on your team. Has Bailey returned to what you thought he would be? And how do you assess this?
And more.
Has he really? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
He's playing the best football of his career because before he was more not as consistent every down kind of guy, although he was playing every down for the most part. He's really been great against the run. He's smart. He's reshaped his body. He's just a much better football player. And, he's got his twin brother playing some too, Joshua Bailey at nose, who hadn't really played at all his first 4 years. Had a redshirt year. But Josh is really playing well there. And I think if you look at Iowa State's defense, you mentioned Jaquan Bailey, but, Will McDonald's leading the other end, who actually doesn't even start, is leading the league in sacks. He's actually ahead of Jaquan. Iowa State's been able to get pressure, but the biggest change, I think, from down in and down out kind of situation for Iowa State is that defensive line. we're playing about 7 or 8 guys in that 3-man front, and they're all good players. And we've been able to control the line of scrimmage pretty much in every game. And I think that's going to be one of the big battles. If Iowa State can slow Hubbard and Brown and those guys down and try to make Oklahoma State one-dimensional, it gives Iowa State a great chance. But it's because that defensive line has really played well.
You know, that look, and it's kind of a deceiving look. I mean, if you just look at it from the top, they only got 3 guys down, and that invites the run. We got 5 blockers on 3. Let's just run it all the time. But you guys on the next level do such a great job of filling holes and being where they're supposed to be and taking the end runs out. I mean, doing all the good things that they need to do. So it's not exactly we're just going to try to do it with 3 and drop 8. I mean, you guys move people around where you better know where they are.
And we'll bring pressure at times. No, we haven't blitzed as much this year as we maybe have in the past because we've been able to get good pressure even with 3, sometimes 4. But once in a while, we'll bring a corner blitz or bring both safeties and try to say, hey, are you going to have enough time to make the play that guy's probably going to be open out there? But it's been not as aggressive at times. But I think you get down to they try to save it a lot, I think, for later or critical situations without tipping their hand too much earlier in the game.
Your secondary, you probably play deeper than most on the back end. You don't want to get thrown over your head. So that does give a little bit of room between backers and the safeties if you can find that room, if you can find the time to throw it, which leads me to this. Hey, you guys know as well as we've been talking about it here, Spencer Sanders will likely get the start. He's coming off a month of inactivity, had the ankle injury. If we know it, your defensive coaches know it. Sure. What kind of pressure they're going to see if he's really back and if he's in rhythm?
Well, I think the big thing, for Iowa State will be to be under control your gap, control your zone, know where you're supposed to be. And if that means you're spying on Sanders, or you have a rush lane where you're rushing the passer, you've got to maintain that lane. You've got to do it, and I think that's the single biggest thing. Keep him in the pocket. Don't let him get out because we have confidence that our guys are eventually going to get there. So maybe a little different strategy against him as opposed to your other guy. But certainly respect Sanders' ability, both as a thrower, but especially that added dimension of that running quarterback drives, defensive coordinators nuts every week.
And you brought him up kind of in a roundabout way. I mean, obviously your defensive coaches had to introduce part of the game plan for Illingworth, who's a different kind of guy, but certainly a capable guy. He's shown that he can move the football in his own way.
Well, he can. He's got the size. He can throw the football. His completion percentage for a true freshman is really off the charts. He's thrown to some really good guys. I think that's one of the single biggest thing. But I don't know that he's played the competition yet. I think West Virginia's got a pretty good defense. I think this will be the best defense you faced. We'll see if that's true or not. But I think Iowa State's defense is pretty good and better than he's faced, and maybe can give him some looks that he hasn't seen before.
And Young will not be available in the first half. And we're talking about a guy who's probably pretty active, I think, in that defense. Right.
There's some Arnold Ozuna has played a lot, started games, actually even started this year at that middle safety spot, so they feel pretty good. They feel really good about him. Obviously, you want to have Ishim back, but they'll get him in the second half. We may see Greg Eisworth move to that spot, too. They may move some guys around because a number of different guys have played it, and our 3 safeties, while they're not completely interchangeable, I think the guys are versatile enough to be able to play more than one spot so you can get your best guys who are available out on the field at any given time.
Well, you got a guy like Brock Purdy as we switch it over to the offense now. I mean, that'll bring a lot of confidence to a coaching staff for sure. Guy who knows the game, knows what he can do, what his teammates can do, make sure you're in the right play. Hall seems to be better. You got the 3 tights. This is an offense that is greedy. We were talking about before you came in here. You like to hog the ball. It's tough to get this offense out of there in 3 and out.
Yeah, a little different approach, I think, than what you guys have. I mean, we don't have the big play guys like we've had some in the past. It's more of a, hey, we're going to drive it down the field. We are averaging 7 yards of play so far this season, which is the best in the Big 12. So Brees has been able to run the football. The biggest, maybe the best news from a Cyclone standpoint is that the Iowa State's offensive line has done a good job. Now, we've had injuries. We've lost our best offensive lineman. He won't play Saturday. He was injured in the first half of the first game of the season. So he put a redshirt freshman in there who's played great. We had to replace our starting right tackle last week after an injury with another redshirt freshman, and he did well. We've been able to run the football. Brees is averaging, 5.5, 6 yards a carry. He's a really good back, but the offensive line has taken a step, and they're certainly aided by, we'll play a lot of 13 personnel. We'll play 3 tight ends, and those guys can all block, and they can all catch the ball, and they're all big. So we feel that's a great weapon for us. And you talk about ball control offenses. Well, I think 3 tight ends kind of tells you who you are, when you do that.
Yeah, and the numbers aren't always this way, but if you're not in second and long, third and long, and I mean like long double digits, 12, 13, 14 yards, but if you're in that second and 3, third and 4 type thing, those tight ends will find a way, and or Hall will find a way to get you 4 or 5 yards and maintain the possession and move the sticks.
Yeah, we've been good on third down. I mean, I wouldn't say great. A little struggle early in the year getting out of the gate, but the last couple games we've been really solid. Last 2.5 games I'd say been really solid in putting ourselves in manageable situations, and that's where when you have a guy like Purdy, even if you are a 3rd and 9. I remember back about 4 years ago, think, well, hopefully we don't turn it over before we punt it,
Yeah.
But since Brock's been there, you kind of get that sense, he may be able to extend the play, make a play, and keep the chains moving, and I think he's kind of an X factor. He had a tough game against you guys last year, threw way too many passes. I mean, that was, because we didn't have the balance we needed. He threw 63, I think.
Yeah.
But he had 3 picked, and he's got to be on point in terms of not turning the football over. That's going to be huge, I think, in this game for either team. It always is, and I think Saturday that could be one of the tipping points.
On the offensive line, you mentioned Downing. I guess Ramos is the guy we're talking about too.
Right.
So they won't play on the offensive.
Downing won't. I'm not sure about Ramos, but I would guess not. But,
okay.
But strictly a guess.
And what about Milton?
So it'll be
Milton?
Remsburg and Simmons on that side.
Okay. And what about Milton? Is he up and down now? Maybe yes, maybe no.
He's a maybe.
Okay, so. But you mentioned to me the other night, Hutchinson, I guess, is a guy that has really come on and maybe is the premier guy in the receiver corps.
He got off to a bit of a slow start. Junior college guy. We had 0 spring practices, so even though he came in early, he was able to get some work in, but timing was a little off, and then really, with all the receivers, to be honest, that first game, nobody was on the same page. We had a bunch of drops, and we really haven't had that issue since. They've really kind of took that. We had a bye week after our first game, and they kind of got things cleaned up. And Xavier is a guy who's really talented, not a blazer though, but good speed, good hands, and he's a guy between Charlie Kohler and Chase Allen and Hutchinson. Those are the 3 guys that are the real security blankets for Brock when he's looking for somebody, when he's got to move. Quickly,
you cleaned up the special teams problems. I mean, I like the way you can be productive there. You got to, I don't know much about Rivera, but Sally's good. You got guys you can count on to rescue drives if you have to.
Yeah, Rivera's been really good. I mean, he's leading the league in punting. We're not that great in net because we gave up a 85-yard return, but he's 45-yard kick guy. He's solid. Sally's great. Not great range. I mean, he may make one from 45, but that's probably, I don't know if he's going to do much more than that. But he had made 11 in a row before he got one blocked. the other day.
Yeah.
It was returned for a touchdown, but then he came back and made a couple kicks after that. So yeah, he's been good, and the kick return game is good though. Kene Nwangu is one of the best in the country. He had maybe the play that turned the OU game around when after Oklahoma had taken the lead.
Uh-huh.
He had 85-yard return, and then Iowa State pretty much dominated from there on out, scored a couple times to win the game. But he is a game breaker, and he's solid as a running back as well. He's a guy that was a 200-meter champ in Texas. He's a big dude too for that kind of speed. So always a weapon.
All right, quickly, give me a little Cliff Notes version of what's going on in the Hilton Coliseum here in Iowa State basketball.
Well, we're going to have a bunch of new faces, that's for sure. We lost Tyrese Halliburton, who will be a top 10 pick in the draft. But we got Rasir Bolton back. I think we had kids sit out last year, transfer from Arkansas Little Rock, and Javen Johnson, a 6'6" guy. What Steve has tried to do, he likes those guys that can play. Teams like we had a couple of years ago where you've got a whole bunch of 6'5", 6'6" athletes, multiple positions. You can switch 1 through 5. And we've kind of recruited to that. We did get a 7-footer who was a top 60 kid, local kid. I don't know how much of a factor he's going to be this year, but he can really stroke it. He had a Baylor offer, so it tells me he must be okay.
Yeah.
But
I'd say so, yeah.
Yeah, he's pretty good. And then a grad transfer and a transfer from Memphis, a kid who wanted to commit to Iowa State initially. But we took Tyrese Halliburton instead, which nobody's regretting that. But he started as a freshman. He's 5'9". Started as a freshman at Memphis, kind of got recruited over. But he's a guy that can really stroke it, super athletic. I think he's going to be an exciting player for us. Plus, we got Condit and Solomon Young inside. We got some guys that can still play. I mean, I think Solomon liked playing against the Cowboys.
Yeah, he liked to play every night against Oklahoma State. Really, he would. That's for sure. That 1 through 5 thing. I mean, that goes back to the Eric Heft days. You could play 1 through 5, couldn't you?
Yeah, in my backyard, my driveway.
Hey,
I was a 5 there.
There was
in my neighborhood
on that small rim that you got in your neighborhood. That's for sure. Hey, last thing, you're not driving to Stillwater. You got to tell the story though. As painful as it may sound, that's a long way from Ames to Fort Worth.
It was, because they've cut down the people that are taking anybody but important personnel, which left John and I out. But
I've been there
on the team planes. Not taking any guests of any kind, and so we said, well, okay, I guess we're driving. So we drove. We get to the hotel lobby. And there's our athletic director, Jamie Pollard, and said, hey, when do you guys just get in? I said, yeah. He said, well, he asked something about a flight. I said, no, we drove. He said, you drove? Why did you drive? It's like, well, because you wouldn't let us on the plane. But he didn't know anything about it. So he said, hey, you guys can take a university plane. So that's what we're doing. So
wow.
Hats off to our athletic director, who is one of the best in the country, in my opinion.
I would say I would say that too if he's letting you on the university plane. I mean, that's I would certainly have nice things to say about him. But you can get that plane right here in Stillwater, right? You can fly right in.
Oh, heck yeah. So we'll beat the team back, actually. So.
Wow. See, and you're into that on a serious note. You're into the testing and all that. I mean, you're around the team, so you have to be clean in order to do so.
I have to be clean before I get on the plane. So we'll be tested Friday. So.
Wow. Hey, isn't this a crazy time, though? Did you think when you signed up for this broadcasting thing that you'd be doing this?
Well, no. I mean, when I started doing it, they had just come out with radio. TV wasn't even a thought yet. So,
let me tell
that
you.
would be a no.
Let me tell you, Hef. That was me you're talking about, not you.
That 1918 pandemic, I was young then. I don't remember much what we had to do.
I remember commenting on that on a radio show back in 1918, trying to say something about that. But, it's good to see, though, two teams that have followed, go back to our original discussion, have followed the protocols and followed what they were supposed to do. They're actually going to get a chance to play without a doubt, the premier game in the conference. But I think you could make an argument, even with the Big Ten starting up, one of the premier games around the country.
Yeah, well, it is. I mean, it's the two highest-ranked team matchup, I think, Saturday. So, yeah, it should be great, and the one thing, it's not a must-win for either team, but it would be a great win for either team because either team can still, take care of their business. Iowa State's already taken care of, maybe a little bit more than the Cowboys have, but everything's still going to be out in front for either team, regardless of what happens.
Hey, as always, appreciate your conversation. We always have great ones off the air, but this wasn't bad on the air, though.
It was a close second.
They're never as good as our conversations off the air, but we would never get those aired. That's the problem. That would be a hard time.
Yeah. One time.
And that would be it. We'd be talking about the good old days. Hey, listen, you guys have a good trip down, and we'll see when you get here. But I appreciate your time as always. Great insight, and best of luck after Saturday.
Right.
After Saturday.
I hear you. I appreciate it. Always great catching up, brother.
All right, man. See ya.
Yeah.
That's Eric Heft, good friend of mine, and we've had a good relationship for probably 20 years, maybe more than that. But a guy who shoots it straight, and